Hello one and all, and welcome back to ADSR. My name's Paul Nolan. I am back in the place. Yes, they let me back through the door again, even though I'm in my own studio at home, but you get the internet analogy anyway. Welcome. It's been a while since I've graced the live stream of ADSR, and it's great to be back. And what a day it is, because not every day we get a new 303 plugin, especially from the likes of Arturia. Today is that day. Arturia Acid V is here, and we are going to go through it, and we're going to explore it, and we're going to show you just how good this plugin is. And I absolutely adore 303s. I love the sound. I've been a big user of them, both in hardware forms and also in various plugins over the years. And let me tell you, this ranks right up there. So if you haven't been here before, welcome. This is ADSR, the place for all things educational, as well as all things synths, plugins, presets, sample packs, you name it. ADSR's got you covered. ADSRsounds.com. Give us a like. Give us a subscribe to the YouTube channel, because streams like this are happening all the time. And also as well, we're doing offers, we're doing giveaways. We're actually doing 50% off Acid V right now on the website. And also, if you keep it locked to the chat, which will be over here or down here, depending upon what you're doing on YouTube, you'll be able to see that there'll be details of a giveaway. So we are going to give away some licenses of Acid V as well. So extremely exciting stuff. So I'm not going to delay any longer. I'm trying not to say that thing that everybody says that makes you sound like you're in a Shakespearean play. Much ado about nothing. All right, so here we are. We are in. And I actually was back in the studio today. I took some time off because I finished an album and released it. And I'm back in the studio for the first time today. Little jaunt to Ibiza to go and enjoy myself for 36 hours and come back feeling all inspired. So this stream come at the right time. So I thought to myself, let's take Acid V for a run. Let's see what it can do. And let's break down this little track, and then we'll actually, or this little idea, and we'll get into what's actually going on under the hood here. There you go. And as you can hear, it just sounds beastly straight out of the box. So as you can probably tell already, I've had a great time with this thing. And what I love about it is the simplicity, because I've got to say, from my own experience, having used various different plugins over the years of 303 varieties from, other manufacturers, shall we say, I've had an amazing time with all of them. They can be a little bit difficult to navigate, especially with the more step sequencey kind of elements of 303s that are obviously a big part of the entire fascination with them, right? And this is what I love about Acid V. It's obviously captured the classic acid sound really, really well. You can hear it's got that squelch, it's got that squeal, but also as well, it's incredibly nice to work with and edit, and there's some nice touches. So you'll know this if you are familiar with Arturia's work at all, where what they'll do when they bring something into V standard, shall we say, whether it's the Mini V or the Jupiter 8V or any of the other synths that they've given the V treatment to over the years. CS80 is another one that comes to mind. They don't just like to emulate the original unit, they like to go the extra mile. It's absolutely no different here. So what we're going to go through is some of the extra features that actually you wouldn't necessarily get on a hardware 303. That's if you can get your hands on a hardware 303 these days, because I don't really have noticed. The original ones that you really want, kind of expensive. Anyway, so as with all things Arturia, and personally I think Arturia have been on something of a great run of form recently, And they have really come to the plate with some amazing new products. If you've seen some of my other live streams for ADSR, like the augmented stuff that we did some film trailer stuff with recently, or the FX collection. The FX collection is all over this, by the way. And very, very cool it is too. So what you've got here is the regular 303. So you've got obviously the oscillator, it's the mono synth, it's everything you expect. It's got your sawtooth and your square waves and all of these classics from the actual hardware. One of the things that the original hardware didn't have is a sub-oscillator. And this is what kind of like quite nice, is the fact that you can add in this sub-oscillator at various waveforms and really thicken the sound. That's the first thing. Obviously, as well, there was no onboard distortion. That also had to happen, you know, of its own. And you had to kind of put it through pedals and everything else. And that was also, you know, the great element. However, you've got this great onboard distortion. So what we'll do is we'll actually strip this sound back. And we won't have any send or return effects on there because, again, I've got things like Arturia's granular effects, like the fragments. The LX24 reverb is absolutely stunning. And the delay, the tape echo, the Roland space echo type thing is fantastic as well. And that's really adding to the sound. And also as well, you'll probably see I've got a couple of other elements on here. I've got Arturia's filter MS20, which sounds great. And then I've got this beautiful disc tube culture, which obviously is, you know, emulating the likes of the thermionic culture, culture vulture, that kind of unit. So what we'll do is we'll actually pull all that back for a second. We'll turn my little sidechain and plug it off so we can actually get it for real and the real sounds. And as you can hear straight away, you know, it sounds just fat. And that's because there's a lot going on underneath the hood. And obviously you've got this distortion from the start with various different types. You've got tape, tube, you've got Germanium, which is the main one that we're using here. You've got a Wavefolder, all sorts of different stuff. So let's try some of these different distortion types. I mean, we hit the metal there and then we basically just end up at blade straight away. Soft clip is beautiful. Tape's nice and smooth. A little less bite. Yeah, the tube is wild. Listen to that. And again, I love the fact that the preset is just called Ready for Kicks. And as soon as I loaded this preset up this morning, I was like, yes, it is ready for a kick. Let's put a giant kick drum underneath it and get on with our lives, shall we? Absolutely beautiful. So, Deci on the chat here, I'm just monitoring the chat as well, says there is some white noise. That is exactly correct. That is part of the preset, because if we hit our little button here, we actually get into a section which is kind of like almost like a circuit bending kind of like mod element to it, which is really cool. So you've got this noise gain as well, and it kind of follows the envelope. So if you don't want that sound, you can pull it back. And again, going back to Germanium. So it can be nice to add a little bit of presence through that noise gain to really, you know, help things sort of stand out in the track. So really, really nice. And again, you've got all these extra elements like bass boost. So again, that can control the oscillator bass level, as it says on the bottom. So if you need like a more hollow sound, let's say, for example, if you're layering with another sound, like I am with another instance of this, it can be quite nice sometimes to pull the bass boost out. You've also got the ability to change the pulse width. We open that a bit more. So you've got that like nice little subtlety there. You can change the accent attack as well, just to maybe soften it a little bit if you wanted to, or bring it down. And actually, in the higher levels there, it actually has like more pronouncement, so it really makes it stick out a bit more. You can also change the filter cutoff range. So if you really want to go full on Josh Wink, higher state of consciousness, you definitely can. You get that real tweaky top end, you know? It's got that real squelch to it. It's so good. So it's got all the character. I mean, you can hear that straight out the gate, you know? Straight out of the box, even though it's in the box. You know what I'm saying? So very, very cool. Really, really nice stuff. And just, as you can tell straight away, it's so easy to hit the ground running with it that it's kind of shocked me, to be honest. And, you know, I've had a great time putting this little idea together today, just tweaking this one preset and just kind of, you know, getting into a slightly different form. So to talk about that for a second, what makes it really interesting is the rest of what's going on. And like I mentioned before, one of my kind of bits of feedback I've always had for other 303 plugins is that the sequences are not often the easiest, and because of the need to kind of make it feel like or look like a 303 unit, sometimes it's a little difficult to kind of get everything feeling easy from a workflow perspective. I really think Arturia have nailed this. And again, it's something they do great. They always optimize the workflow of possibly quite difficult to use vintage synths. So if we hit the advanced here, you can see we've got 3 modulators that we can assign to various parameters. You can actually see part of it's assigned already. You've got 4 slots for effects. So you've already got things like multi-band compression and tape echo, and we could pop another couple of things on here. But the sequencer really comes alive for me. This plugin really goes to another level where this is concerned. And again, you can go into things like the sequencer browser here. And what's really nice is that you can kind of go in and take different presets, sequences, essentially. So not only can you go into, say, for example, the library here and decide, you know, which kind of like, you know, which preset you want. If there's a sequence attached to this, you can actually take the sequence from that preset and apply it to the one that you're currently on. Like, it's so good. It's so good. Basically, and actually, like, there's an interesting chat coming here from Concrete. Only thing I don't like in the sequencer, then the Acid V doesn't start when you hit play on your door. Well, does for me. Definitely does for me. So, again, what you'll want to do is just make sure that sequencer play mode is on. And, yeah, basically, like, it will synchronize to that. Absolutely no problem at all. And again, you can make sure that that's the case through this situation here. It may be that you've got the lock on, or there's another sequence or another setting that's got a bit awry. You know, it's quite an interesting thing. So, do you have a MIDI not on the door at all? Yeah, I do. So you have to trigger it with a MIDI note. So basically here, and this is another part of the thing that's actually quite powerful, is the fact that even though this is saying C here on the sequencer, I'm actually triggering it in D. And it means I can just throw a 1-bar loop into this, and I can just play from there, essentially. So again, this does pitch, as you can hear. And this is one of the things I really loved, is that in, again, previous incarnations of 303 plugins, I always found it quite difficult to get the pitch right and be able to get the sequence to trigger correctly. And if I wanted to change the key, I needed to actually flip the entire sequence and undo it all, redo it all. Those days are gone with the Acid V. Like, it's really, really quite intuitive. So again, like, really, really cool. Very, very cool. So yeah, from there, you've basically got like, you know, like Decibeats has just said in the chat there, free transpose. Just makes life so much easier. So again, we've got this kind of like bubbly, nice sequence, but we can take it to another level. So just even for starters, you know, there's things like we see in other plugins, like swing. So this is just set to 50% at the moment. So why don't we just knock that to 55% and see what happens? And of course, we're going to need a kick drum to put this with. So yeah, like lots of people asking about MIDI and stuff. What I would actually say, the thing that really struck me using this, like in the run up to this stream, is that this sequencer is genuinely reminiscent of another Arturia synth sequencer, which I absolutely love because of how versatile it is the Arturia Pigments sequencer. And I used to use that in a really exotic way. I also used to use that sequencer because it had the capability to do MIDI out. I used Pigment sequencer to control all the synths because it was that good and it had that many parameters, and like Arturia could probably sell that as a separate product as just a MIDI sequencer, and it would probably sell quite well. Honestly, like the standard of their sequencers in recent synths like this, Pigments, etc., are astonishingly good. So good. So good. So we'll get into that a little bit more in terms of the actual possibilities and the ramifications of it all. So obviously we're triggering here with a 55% swing. It's added something really nice. We can obviously change things like the rate if we wanted to kind of go a bit crazy, which it doesn't sound great there, but we could go to 8 maybe. And as you can hear there, you can change the gate just to make it flow a bit more. Or shorten it, make it a bit more clipped. So you have your gate. What's really cool is being able to actually take sequences here, and you've got both classic scales like your major scale, your minor scale, your modes like your Dorian mode, etc., but acid style scales as well. So quite interesting. So let's say, for example, if I change this from a custom to, let's say, for example, a pentasidic, I see what they've done there. What it will do is actually change the scale here and everything else from that aspect. And this is going to be really interesting going forward because of what we're going to do in terms of generating stuff. So again, like there is in other Arturia synths like Pigments, like I mentioned before, there's a possibility of changing the direction of the sequencer so we can go forward and backwards, which is quite an interesting one. And I think we'd probably need to duplicate and lengthen our sequence here. So let's just do that quickly to get the forward and backward motion going. Quite cool. And it just adds that little bit of variation. Now, what would be really cool here is actually if we were to duplicate that out again to say 8 bars, and what we can do is take this note, trigger it up to here, and then we get that secondary backwards element as the sequencer reverses, almost like a kind of a fill at the end. So you'll get this. Okay, now bar 8 is the one to go for. And it just adds that little variation. You get that little fill, or as we call them, a turnaround at the end of like an 8-bar section. Just beautiful. Just really, really lovely. So you can really work with it on that scale. Now, let's say, for example, if we want to add in an element of randomness, so an element of, we want to maybe get a bit polyrhythmical, maybe we want to get, into some interesting different situations. So what we can do is we can apply something called polymetric. So what polymetric means is that basically each track, as we call it, whether it's the octave kind of modulation here, the various different note tracks here, or the ability to create slide, accent, or vibrato, all have, with these little blue notes here, these little blue lines here, and even in the sequencer itself, they have different points at which they change. So this can make things super interesting. So let's say, for example, if I were to change this from, say, 16 to 9, for example, so that's 12, 11, 10, 9. Okay, so what we'll get is this polyrhythmical element, but not just polyrhythms in terms of an odd numbers of 16th notes kind of cycling around a 4/4. We'll also get different modulations in terms of the octave shift, the octave transposition in the sequence, and things like the slide, the accent, the vibrato. So listen to this. So you get all of this interesting randomness, and you can kind of get these generative rhythms going with the polymetric, which is really cool. You can then essentially decide how many bars does it reset back to 1. So let's say, for example, we do that every 4 bars. What will happen is that we get that reset back to the 1. Maybe we just change that to another odd numbered element, and it just makes things a little bit more interesting, right? And you'll notice it snaps back to the 1 after 4 bars. So really, really cool. So you can do things like that. You can also change the amount of steps. So we can go all the way up to 64 from the original 16. So if you wanted to add in, again, a little bit more nuance into it, you can definitely do that. Now, actually, I'm leading up to one of my favorite parts of the Acid V. And it's this transmutation, which is a great word. To transmute something. Very powerful, very powerful. Look it up, kids. Look it up. So basically, what we can do is change the density and also do some random generation. So that's where the scale gets interesting, because whatever the transmutation values give you, you end up with it happening over that scale. So let's say, for example, I want to, the density's fairly large anyway, right? It's at 88%. That means 88% of the sequence is filled with notes. That means if I were to turn it up to 100, guess what? The 2 gaps that were there are going to get filled. Not exactly, world-changing, but, very, very useful. It's not rocket science, right? So, again, what would be quite nice is actually, 88 is your, limit here for getting this groove going, because you need those 2 gaps. What you could do is to start the sequence off with a much lower density of notes. Something like that. And you could even add in and then add the density. and basically make the sequence more complex as you go. Very, very nice. So that's one element that you can work on. Another element, and as you can see, you can shift all the way through here, all the way up to 64 steps. Very nice. Then, let's say, for example, we want to do some generation, right? So, hit generate. It's added some new notes. Again, on that pentasidic scale. So let's see what it's done. When it comes to acid, I normally like, unless it's a big accent note on like an octave up, I do like things to not be on the beat. So that's bubbling along really nicely now. So ultimately, you've got this ability to generate more and more random stuff. So the more we fill our little, you know, science bottle here of, you know, toxic waste, and then if I let go there, boom, it'll just do something completely different. And this is where you can kind of start using the shift function. So let's say, for example, I don't really like the way that some of the notes are landing. What I can do is I can shift everything over one, and the whole sequence shifts, and then if there's a note on the last step, it'll occur on the first. See, I like that. So, really cool, right? So, I wouldn't have found that completely new and unique signature kind of, or sequence sound, had I not just used the shift to nudge the sequence in its entirety over 2 steps. And now I'm into a whole different ballpark. Now, the funny thing is as well, if I wanted to, what I could do is I could limit it down to, say, 3 steps, and then just do the polyrhythmical thing where it just turns around. Beautiful, right? Absolutely beautiful. So really, really cool. And just how quickly, like, we're not even like half an hour into the stream, and I spent the first 5 minutes talking, and we're just into this world of acidic goodness. So from there, we can get into things like modulation and effects. Now, let's say, for example, you know, I quite like this sequence, but I'd like to be able to do something else with it. So somebody was mentioning before about MIDI outs and exporting MIDI. If you actually look here, this little button here on the left-hand side that's just highlighted, that's just turned green, is literally a MIDI export. So what I can do quite literally is drag and drop. And there you go. So if we were to pop that away for a sec, you can actually see that's what it looks like. I just need to turn that sequencer off. I'm probably going to need to... There we go. So what we could actually do there is now start to edit that a little bit more. Obviously, it's not exactly what was being played through the sequencer, because we need to add in the slides and everything else. But again, let's say, for example, if we do something like really crazy over the course of, say, 16 elements, We can then drag that sequence in here. Maybe we overwrite that. And then you can kind of see exactly what it's come up with. Let's fold that down. And again, we can kind of further edit it from there. And there we go. So, yeah, very, very, very cool. Then as well, the other thing you've got is a bit more of a straight, simple ARP, which can be used. So if I just turn that off and then go back to... There we go. So you can use the ARP as well. Very, very cool. Yeah. So very, very cool. So you've got that arpeggio as well. Again, very self-explanatory. You've got a gate. You've got a playback function, forwards and backwards. You can go to various modes of the ARP, whether it goes up and down exclusive, random, can be quite cool. You can do reversals, that kind of thing. And again, if you want to start from scratch, you can just hit this little eraser icon here and it'll just put things back to a completely normal element. Because you heard there was like slides in, so you can still put the slides, the accents in. Again, this is before I add in the tube, a little bit of side chaining, a bit more filtering with some drive, add in the glue compressor, and then the filter MS20 as well. It kind of flattens it out a little bit with the distortion. It still works quite nicely. So you get that little bit of additional filtering. Quite nice. I like it without. And of course, we just need to put the kick back in. Just great. Just great. Straight out of the box. And the amount of work that I would have had to have done to get a sequence like this and to get it sounding so good would have been, I wouldn't even be halfway there with, you know, other previous versions of 303 plugins, etc. Like, it really, really is just a very, very impressive piece of kit across the board. And we're not finished yet because we've just looked at the sequencer and the ARP, but what about modulation? So again, modulation, something that's very, very simple when it comes to our Arturia plugins. You know, very easy to map such things. As you can see, there's already a modulation destination there. So all you have to do is click and drag, basically. Very, very simple. As you can see here, we've got, you know, nothing on modulator 2 or 3. This could be quite an interesting thing to explore. Let's say, for example, what we can do is we can double click on 0 on a particular modulation when it comes off, and you can see it's not mapped to anything now. So you can unmap from there. So we've got various different presets. And, well, you know, we can use ADSR because, hey, we are ADSR. We're on an ADSR stream. How funny. Lols. Anyway, so you can use this in a different fashion. You can use it in a sync mode. Yeah, we can use it in a much longer variety of different things. And you can just drag and drop. And then from there, once that's highlighted, you can click and drag on the little pie icon here. And you'll see it turn blue around the outside of the rotary that you're looking to modulate, and it will give a range. So let's say, for example, if we play that now. And we can flip that. that it's not quite as wild. And you can create various different sequences. So the modulation possibilities are crazy just going off the cutoff alone, as you can see it working. Just absolutely brilliant. Really, really cool. And you've got two others that you can map to various different aspects. And again, modulation 1 could also be mapped to various different elements as well. So as, say, for example, maybe we, put it to something like the decay. So it moves in unison. And then by hovering over to get the destinations, we can decide the level of control that each modulation destination has. So again, on the decay or on the cutoff, we can decide how much of a control it has, which is really cool. And then from there, we could also do maybe a ramp up over the course of, say, a bar. Maybe we drag that to the drive element. And there's just a whole host of different possibilities there. Really, really cool. And from there, we've got obviously the effects section, which we haven't looked at in too much detail as yet. So what we can do is just head over to the modulations here, turn those guys off. Really nice. Okay, so very, very cool. And yeah, I suppose Jai, you were saying about really needs a nice GPU, I guess some dedicated GPU. I mean, I'm on an Apple Silicon machine, so it's absolutely running gangbusters for me, and I'm live streaming at the same time. So, again, depending upon your processor, whether you're Mac or PC, I'm sure it's going to run great. So from here, we've got the multi-band compressor. And of course, when you've got multi-band compressors, it does mean you've got something like an OPP, if you know what I mean. So you can really drive it there. And what's really nice as well is, let's say, for example, if we go back to the sequencer for a second and we go back to the original sequencer, we wipe that, we pop it back into the presets. It's called Ready for Kick, so we can go all the way down the bottom here. There we go. Should be good now. Back to where we were previously. Very nice. And then we go back to the effect. We can then start to play around with the delay a bit more. I'm a sucker for ping pongs. Very cool. Eight dotted works great with this kind of thing. Adds a bit of stereo width to it, so it keeps everything nice and steady. you've got your various different FX types here as well. So you've got reverb. Again, if you've used any other Arturia plugins, you know what to expect. It's very, very cool. So we can add a bit of reverb here. Blend that a little bit just to give it a bit more space. And then we can do something really interesting where, let's say, for example, we might want to move that reverb over. We'll put the reverb on there. I haven't really changed a lot. And then we can go for other modulations, like super unison's quite cool. You don't normally get unisons with acid sounds. So it's quite interesting to explore. And with just two voices and a little bit of detuning, it kind of comes across more like a flanger. This is quite nice. Then you've got, obviously, choruses. You've got the Juno 6 chorus, which is quite nice. It's got all those lovely little spatial elements, so adding the rest of the drums. Yeah, and Mars Need Max on YouTube has just said, I like that the effects are built in. Me too. I mean, it just gives you so much bang for your buck. And like, previously with, again, other 303 plugins, it was always, what other plugins do I need in order to get this to, like, actually sound like a 303? And, I was a big user of a lot of, like, third-party distortions, like, bass amp emulators, all sorts of different stuff, tape delays, all kinds of stuff in order to get what I can actually do completely in the box. Now, I am using some of the other Arturia effects collection stuff. I am using the Filter V, and I am putting it through the dist culture plugin as well. And I've also got various different elements as well, including the fragments here. So let's just have a little peruse through this and see how it works in combination with other Arturia stuff, should you own it. I did a recent stream on this stuff as well, and it's just brilliant. I'm a big sucker for granular plugins. This is great as well. So again, if I were to, and again, this is on a pre-fader send, so if I wanted to introduce this, I totally could by turning the fader all the way down. And then again, you can scale the UI down to make it a little more useful, so it doesn't take up as much screen real estate as it was on my screen just now. So if you're on a laptop, don't worry. And then adding a bit of the LX24. Just a lovely long reverb on there. And then the delay. So I am kind of stacking effects. So I could actually... So as you can hear, that works great just with the other elements of the Arturia FX collection as well. So yeah, it's incredibly simple, really, really lovely to use. And again, just a really nice little plug and play addition. Very, very nice. So yeah, again, just to kind of like go through like some of the other aspects. You've got your full library here, like you would expect on any other Arturia plugin. You've got the ability to use macros here, which actually appear across the bottom. If I was to make this nice and large again, you can see exactly what I mean. You've got movement, time, timbre, brightness. You've got the full undo history as well, which works really, really nicely. And yeah, just very, very cool. So from there, you can obviously map these things, you can edit them, save into your own user collections. You've got the ability to, add in your own sound banks, create your own folders, playlists, if you will, the whole 9 yards. Very, very nice indeed. Again, the great thing is that there's a real uniformity of like how the Arturia plugins work. So once you're kind of familiar with one, whether it's any of the V collection, any of the VFX collection, whether it's pigments, no matter what, you kind of know what you're going into straight away. And yeah, TI-80 Mark, I totally agree with you. The undo history is massively helpful. Again, the amount of times like that's bailed me out when I've done something and I've completely ruined the sound I've built from scratch, not just in this plugin, but again, across the board with Arturia. It's absolutely superb. Again, another thing as well, which I really love, which, we're kind of talking about more basic stuff here. But the fact is that you've got tutorials. So this is like super useful when you open the plugin for the first time, or say for example if you're new to 303s and you're not quite sure how they work. It's a great way of learning. And again, the funny thing is, like, once you've kind of gone through those initial tutorials, okay, the actual hardware unit might not have the sequencer and all the effects and all the extra bells and whistles we've looked at tonight, but you'll have a basic idea on how to use the hardware as well, So, absolutely. And I agree with what Adrian Goodswen's just said on YouTube there. Control Z is never not useful. Exactly. Your two best friends in this world are Control or Command S and Control or Command S. And Z, I should say, because that was nearly the same person twice. So, yeah, don't take keyboard shortcut advice from me, because obviously I clearly don't know what I'm talking about. So, again, you've also got your ability to change your different macro controls, be able to learn them, be able to, again, completely customize this and obviously save your own presets. So very, very, very cool indeed. And obviously MIDI lens, MIDI mappings, CC numbers, all there. Very, very nice indeed. And again, being able to set the global MIDI channel, just everything you need exactly where you are at. So again, from here, very, very useful to be able to, again, what I might do here, just as a final element, because I'm finding this sound really, really cool, is that I might take everything, including the filter MS-20, Command G, and then we can turn this into a bit of a instrument rack. Command and R, I'm going to call that Acid V 001. And because I keep a lot of my sounds in my own folder, which I like to call the palette, because I'm starting back in the studio for the first time in a while today, in terms of creative work, I'm going to make a new folder. I'm going to call it bass. And then what I can do is configure some elements of cutoff, resonance, or decay. Let's say the drive amount. That'll do for starters. And we can map them to some macros. There we go. So I've got 5 there. Absolutely happy with that. I can then save that. Just drag and drop it into my bass folder. Done. Boom. So I can recall that sound at any time, and it makes life a lot simpler. So again, if you are an Ableton user as well, don't be afraid when you've got a sound going with various different plugins. And again, I've got the disc tube, I've got the filter MS-20 going. You can condensed this sound down. This sound is now going to be absolutely at my disposal at any time. So rather than feeling like you've got to build the thing from scratch again, little workflow tip for you, you can save it from there. You can do the same thing if you're a Logic user by using channel strips. So again, you've got that workflow down as well. And you can have any configuration of plugin in a rack or in, again, a channel strip like we mentioned before in Logic if you happen to be a Logic user. So very cool stuff. I really, really love this plugin. I'm really stoked at what Arturia have done with this. I think it sounds beautiful. I think it's got all the extras you would want from a 303 plugins. Very, very nice. And again, like TI-80 Mark, yeah, saving those macros right away seems like a good way to go. Gotta have those knobs to fiddle with. Absolutely. And just to kind of cut off and go back to that for a second, if like me, you're an Ableton Push user, those macro controls appear across the top of your push. So you've got instant control of the whole thing, and then it makes it feel like hardware. It really, really does enhance things massively. And take it from me, I used to work with producers like an artist like Sasha, for example. And one of the things I did for him was that I went back through years and years and years worth of productions in Ableton and found significant sounds and then had to do this from tracks that he wrote like 10 years ago. Like, it was like a lot of work to kind of like build that library and build it up and build it up and build it up, even across one of his albums, which had came out recently. So one thing as a workflow tip, and again, this is not just unique to Arturia Acid V, there's any plugin at all, once you've made a great sound, save it into a library, save it into a custom library of your sounds. And over time, you'll have all of this custom stuff that nobody else has got that'll make you sound like you. But anyway, I digress. Very, very cool. But like I was saying, absolutely love this plugin. Really, really enjoy it. I think it's absolutely fantastic sounding. And Benjamin Roberts is asking any random buttons. Yeah, there is in the sequencer. So if you go into the advanced view here and bring our sequencer out, you'll see that there's like a generate, a transmutation button, and then a density switch as well. So yeah, you've got randomness in terms of the actual sequences themselves. Not so much random in terms of the actual sound itself, but again, what's really nice, just to kind of like follow up on that, is that the sequencer and the actual sounds themselves are kind of somewhat separate. So you can apply a preset and a sequence from two completely different settings and it would work really, really nice. So yeah, very, very cool indeed. So again, just finishing up, like, you know, we're going to in a moment. Fantastic. I've really enjoyed monitoring the chat all the way through, and you know, it's been a great time. This is obviously on offer, 50% off at adsrsounds.com. That's a really, really great thing, and honestly, you know, I would urge everyone to absolutely pick this up if you are into the acid sound, because it is going to basically be my go-to from now on. Again, if you've checked in the chat as well, there are links going on that the team are posting where you could actually win one of 3 licenses, I believe. And right on cue, they've put the giveaway right in the top of the chat there. So very, very cool. So yeah, if there's any more questions, little final comments, Dark Commission, that's a great name. I bought this yesterday, superb. Been waiting for something like this for a long time. Desi Beats says great review. Thanks a lot. Like the video and subbed. Excellent to have you on board, Desi. Thank you very much. Amazing says the hubba. Cyril, nice to see it on here, mate. And some great regular names like TI-80 Mark. Jai's on the stream again. Phenomenal. Absolutely brilliant stuff. Really, really enjoyed taking you through this evening. It's been an absolute pleasure to be back, and I believe might be back sooner than you think. So, you know, there's going to be more stuff coming, basically, is what I'm trying to say. I'm told that I have a repeat invite. So, again, they kind of let me in depending upon my previous performance. It's like in football, right? You know, or any sort of sport. You're only as good as your last game. So, hopefully, this is good enough to get me back. I'm sure it will be. Anyway, so great stuff. Lovely to see you all. Lovely to see the chat bouncing tonight. Really excited for this plugin. It's an exciting plugin, and it's worth, getting your hopes up for. Absolutely. Adrian's just got it nailed there. Squelches ahoy. I do hope he's talking about the plugin. Anyway, we'll leave it on that particular bombshell. Good to see Lady Boy in here as well. And yeah, before I do 5 minutes of thank yous and everything else, I am going to depart. But it's been an absolute pleasure, as per usual. And see you again soon. Much love. Enjoy the rest of your day, wherever in the world you are. Much love. See you later.